Greetings, KLR cohort, and welcome to this session's Superintendent Spotlight and our problem-based scenario. This session's theme is the real life of the superintendent, where our guest will talk about some real things to expect once you become the executive leader of the school district. For this session, I'm thrilled to welcome Dr. Carrie Ballinger, Superintendent of the Rockcastle County Schools located in beautiful Mount Vernon, Kentucky. So, Dr. Ballinger, welcome, and thanks so much for your willingness to share your experience and expertise with this year's cohort.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm excited about the opportunity and look forward to sharing the perspective and hope to encourage someone along the way.
Would you start just a little bit, tell us about your professional journey? How did you get to be the superintendent of the Rockcastle County Schools?
Certainly. So I probably have a little bit of a different journey than most people that are serving in the superintendency. I started teaching. My first teaching experience was fourth grade in Madison County at Silver Creek Elementary. Absolutely loved that. That following year, my oldest son was born, and he was born with some health issues at the time. Thankfully, he is perfectly healthy now, but at that time, I wasn't able to go back that second year. So I had to take a leave of absence my second year of teaching, and that actually turned into 9 years and 4 kids later that I went back.
Oh,
So when my daughter went to preschool, I decided, it was time for me to enter back into the teaching field, and my career just really took off pretty quickly from there. I was first grade teacher for 10 years, and we always talk about how important it is to encourage others and to encourage someone to go on and seek that administrative role, and that's exactly what happened to me. Dr. Elmer Thomas was my superintendent in Madison County, and he really gave me no choice. He gave me a pamphlet and said, "I've already contacted Asbury University. You're starting this to get your principalship. They're expecting a phone call."
wow.
Well, how do you turn that down? So I did, and got my principalship, and then the following year became a school principal, served in Madison County under that role. At the same time, I was a board member in Rockcastle County, which is very different than most people. I served as board member for 7 years here while I was teaching in Madison County, and became very close, of course, with the superintendent here just through our board work. And he approached me and asked if I would be interested in resigning in Madison County and coming here to work as the DPP. They had a retirement, and you never know what doors are going to open. I never would have expected that. I walked through that door. I was DPP for a year, and he came to me and said, "I'm sure glad you have your superintendent certification because I plan to retire." So
Oh, gosh.
I applied for it. If you had asked me 5 years before, I would have said there's no way I would have been a DPP. There's no way I would have been a superintendent. But, it's just someone having faith in you and saying, "I believe in you. I think you should pursue this," and being willing to walk through those doors as they open. So I'm in my 6th year as the superintendent of Rockcastle County, and I will say I feel like God has truly blessed me, and I'm thankful every day. I wake up thankful every day that I'm be able to serve in this role.
Well, I know the folks in Rockcastle County are too. They're thankful for you. And I will tell you, old US 25 is doing fine right now. You'll know that reference.
I absolutely do.
Uh, and I certainly know Elmer's hard to say no to. And so
Elmer is.
we have to thank him for literally pushing you in that direction. And you know how
Certainly.
I
And
feel
I've
about
never
other
forgotten
people.
that. I
Yeah.
always try to pass that
So
along to people when I see that, they've got a great potential. I always try to encourage them and encourage them to pursue that next step in their career.
that's a really important point. I think it's incumbent on all leaders to seek out and touch those on the shoulders that you see the potential, because most people are unwilling to see beyond that themselves, and they believe it's almost too much for them to say, "I think I can do this," but we know they can. So that's a great point. Thank you for sharing that.
Hmm.
Tell us about in your superintendency, what's been your most personally rewarding uh, issue, or what's been most personally rewarding about being superintendent? How's it shaped you in a good way, both professionally and personally?
Absolutely. I think that's probably the easiest question for me to answer because it's always centered around student success. I mean, nothing brings me any more pleasure than to see a student or a group of students or a class of students or an entire school showing growth in whatever area that they're focused on. And that is what motivates me. We've seen a lot of success academically here over the last 6 years, and that's what pushes me to wake up every morning and come to do my absolute best is to see student growth and to see that they have opportunities once they graduate from high school and to just to keep pushing to ensure that those opportunities for those students grow every year. So always centered around that success that you see.
This session's about the real life of the superintendent. We know that it can take a toll, both professionally and personally, on folks. So, talk to us a little bit about the aspects of the role that have been most personally draining and how they affected your life outside of work.
Um, so there's an old saying, do as I say, not as I do. And I think that's very important. I have my growth area is to create better boundaries. I'm not very good at that. But I do think as a new superintendent going into the profession, it's important to create boundaries for yourself and to make sure that you're carving out time personally for yourself so that you don't experience burnout or being drained from the position because it literally is 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You don't go on vacation, you never get a break. If you do go on vacation, you always have your phone with you. You have to know that going in that that's what you're signing up for and be okay with that. But it is important to carve out time. I mean, there's time that you have to spend with your family. I have been lucky that as I have entered into this role, my children, for the most part, are grown in college or have already graduated for college. So I don't have that responsibility of having children at home. But if you do, and you do have children at home, it is vital that you carve out time just to be a mom or a dad and to devote to your family.
Anything that you do with your calendar, or do you try to sit down at the beginning of the week and try to prioritize what comes and how you're going to fit that time in? I think that's something we're all challenged with.
Sure. I do try to make certain that I leave at the end of the day in a reasonable amount of time. It would be easy to stay at the office every day till 7:30 or 8 o'clock. I mean, that would be so easy. But I do try at least a couple days a week to not schedule anything after 4:30 and to actually leave and go home, whether that be, just to have dinner with my family, to cook together or to exercise together, to be outside together. We live on a farm, so we spend a lot of time outdoors when we have that opportunity. But it is important because if you don't write it down or structure it, then you're here every night till late because the work never ends.
Yeah, I remember my friend Tim Murley, who was the superintendent in Warren County, talked about the time that he was in the Rotary Club meeting and his cows got out of the lot. And he was getting text messages about his cows running up and down the highway down there in Warren County, and he was standing in front of the Rotary Club.
Yeah, yeah,
So being a farmer and a superintendent, it's kind of the same thing. You're trying to care and nurture four things
it,
along the way, and that can be a tough responsibility. That's a great connection you made there.
yeah.
Um, so, can you describe a time when the political or community pressure of the job collided with some things that were your own values and well-being? That comes kind of with the steam and the heat that comes from the role. Can you talk about that? How do you manage those pressures that come from external forces?
Sure. Well, I think very first and foremost is you have to know what your values are. So you have to identify them, and it's important that your personal values align with the values that your school district holds. Oftentimes that's not the case, and that can pose a difficulty for the superintendent if your personal values are not aligned with the values of your school district. So first and foremost, you have to know your values and you have to know what you stand for. And then that makes all of the other stuff a lot easier because if every day you are behaving and modeling your core values and what those are, and you're doing that day in and day out, when those political pressures come or those community pressures, it's easier then to fall back on your values and to have confidence that the decisions you are making are in line with your values. And when you're doing that, whether it turns out your way or it doesn't turn out your way, you can still have the confidence that you have held to your core values and go to sleep at night knowing you've done the absolute best that you can. And whether it's a positive turnout or a negative turnout, you can feel confident in yourself. I think issues arise when you stray from those values or feel you are led politically to stray from those values, but you just have to stay strong and know what you stand for. But again, that comes from the first day on the job. You can't walk in trying to develop your values. You have to know what they are on day one.
Well, part of the real life of the superintendent is making difficult decisions, particularly those that you know are going to spark disappointment or even the potential for anger. Can you share some advice on how you make those kinds of decisions? I know you've shared your values, but can you give us like maybe here's a process I use when I know this is coming?
Sure. So, I always try to write down all pieces of information before I make a decision. So, write down everything you know because the decision can only be based on the information you have. You can't make the decision based on what ifs. So, I try to always deal in facts. It is hard to carve the emotion out of decisions, but you have to do that. You have to make the decision based on facts, and you have to also make the decision based on what's best for kids and not what's best for adults. That is hard sometimes, but we're here. Again, that goes back to your values. You know that you are here to serve students. And so how is that decision that you're making going to impact students? And if you are making every decision that you're making is centered around what's best for students, you're sticking to your core values and you're basing a decision based on facts and you're not allowing emotion to overwhelm you, then again, I feel like that's a solid decision making process. Um, and you just have to make a decision sometimes and have confidence that you've made it. And you will make wrong decisions. We all do. But you have to give yourself some grace sometimes and know that if you're following that process, then you've done the very best that you can with all the information that you can. You've kept students at the forefront of your decision making, and then you can just be satisfied in that. And you will never please everyone, and you can't expect to do so.
So when someone is not pleased and you know
Mm.
you see it on your appointment calendar and you know they're coming in to come at you, not with you.
Sure.
So talk about some strategies that you use to prepare for that and how you handle situations like that, how you keep your head while they're losing theirs. Talk to us about that. That's really an important element of
Hmm.
your job.
So, of course, I serve in a rural community. So, I have the opportunity to build relationships on the forefront, and I work really, really hard to do so. And I always liken it to the children's book about filling your bucket
Uh,
because I try to fill buckets along the way, whether that's through our social media presence, that's my presence at ball games, that's my presence in the parent pickup line. I try all day long, every day, to fill buckets, fill buckets, fill buckets, because when those situations arise, there's going to be with some withdrawals from the buckets because people are upset. But if you have worked hard to build relationships and people know that you're transparent and they know that you're fair and they know that you're putting kids first, those conversations go a lot better. So that's always been my strategy is I spend a lot of capital on building relationships in my community for that very purpose.
in many ways, your training as a DPP helps a lot with that because your DPPs face some really critical situations with families.
Absolutely.
You're going to face conflict on a pretty regular basis. Is that true?
Absolutely. And families have to know that you're a team. It can't be families against the school, school against the family. So in our district, we have worked very, very hard on our mission and vision and core values and parameters of our behavior to make sure that families know that we're on their side. We're here to help you break down barriers. We're here to help you solve problems. Now, that doesn't mean things aren't always going to go smooth because they don't. But when people know genuinely have confidence that that is your belief system, then it does make it go a little smoother than it might otherwise.
How do you manage the constant visibility that being a superintendent brings from social media to public events, those kind of things? How do you handle that?
again, I think it's an awareness piece. You just have to know that, and you have to be okay with that going in. I think a lot of times people are enter into the superintendency and are a little bit surprised that, all eyes are always on me. That because as a school principal, that might be the case to some extent, or someone working in a central office position, but it just magnified 100 times when you become the superintendent. So I think primarily you just have to have an awareness of that and be okay and know that that's the climate that we live in. And for the most part, I think superintendents are excellent role models. And again, I keep going back to your values, but if you're living your values, positive values, and your whole life is centered around that, then it makes it a little bit easier because, there's nothing that you have nothing to hide. You're out there and you're visible, and that's okay because, you want to be that spokesperson and represent your school community.
So another one of the realities of superintendency is building relationship with school board members who are
Hmm.
elected. So talk to us a little bit about how you develop those relationships, how you nurture those relationships, and has there been a time when you've had a disagreement with a board member of some kind, either philosophically or even a decision that you've made? And how do you manage those kind of things? And what would you tell our aspiring superintendents about? Give some advice on how to deal with that.
Well, developing relationships with your board at the end of the day is vital to you continuing to work in that school district. Those five individuals, if they're not happy with you, you are not going to be able to continue the good work that you're doing in your district. So those five people, you have to really get to know them. And I think it's important to know how each individual likes to be communicated with because my board chair, she wants to come in and have face-to-face conversations. I have another board member that is very busy with his job, so he's traveling a lot, and he just wants a quick text message to say, "Hey, FYI, here's some dates that I need you to be aware of." He doesn't want to come in and sit down and have a one-on-one. But you have to know that, and then you have to cater to their individual needs and make sure that they feel like you are respecting them and that you are providing them the adequate information that they want and deserve. I mean, that they're elected to oversee the school district. So, transparency is huge. I think you don't ever, as a superintendent, try to hide anything from your board. I think, you just give them the facts and you have to work together to problem solve. And I you just that is really important. Just tell them. I mean, you don't sometimes it's not good news. I mean, if it's financial and we've had a situation just this week where we've lost some money in our final seek allocation in transportation, and we had a board meeting last night, and that would have been easy to have held off till next month until we had the problem solved. But we just said, here's what we found out on Friday. We don't have an answer for you right now. But we'll come back in April and we'll give you that solution. We give us some time to work through the data and find the solution. But I think it's very important to be transparent because when board members feel like you're hiding something, then they become suspicious and it just hurts that relationship.
That's terrific advice. I think if anything we've gotten in these interviews I've been doing this year, it's the term transparency. So it sounds like that needs to emerge to one of our topics. So KLR cohort folks, you can watch for transparency and a pretty good session about what that means, definitions, how to utilize it, how to leverage it, but also what the cautions are around transparency. It really is very important. So what words of advice do you have for women who are seeking the superintendent's role? What's it like to be a woman superintendent in this state?
Hmm. So I get asked that a lot, and I'm really happy to say that I have never in my 6 years felt any different as a woman serving in the role than I would perceive that a male feels. I've always been able to have open conversations with my male counterparts and lean on them for advice, and I feel like they lean on me for advice. But I think the important part as a female is probably a male as well, is you just have to be yourself. Don't try to be someone else.
Hmm.
Um, I always tell this story because I think this is so important. I followed a superintendent who was very stoic and very quiet and never showed any emotion, and maybe your typical perception of a superintendent. And my first year at a basketball game, um, well, let me rewind a second and say I love high school sports. I love it. I've always loved high school sports. And it is very hard for me to contain my excitement for our kids when they're doing well. I want to cheer for them and I want to be happy and excited for them and I want them to know that I'm excited for them. So in my very first year during basketball season, I told my husband, I said, I think I need to quit cheering so much. Like I need to just sit here and be calm and not, I just need to be more superintendent like. So I tried that for a game. I tried that for a game. And the next morning, my high school basketball coach called me
Oh,
and he was like, "Are you upset? Did I do something? What's wrong?" And I said, "Why? Why would you think that?" And he said, "Well, as soon as we got in the locker room, the kids and I both noticed that you weren't cheering for us."
oh gosh.
And I was like, "Okay, I can't be someone else. I have to be me." And those kids notice that I'm supporting them and I'm there for them. So that was a good lesson for me. And you just have to be yourself. You can't be someone else. And you've got to, your community and your board has hired you. If they wanted someone else, they would have hired someone else in that interview process.
Wow. That's a great story. And go Rockets, right?
Yep, go Rock. Yep. So I'm just going to keep cheering.
Yeah.
And, I'm usually
Well,
right behind the bench and proud of my kids and proud of my coaches.
I think everyone in our cohort would agree. You exemplify executive presence and it's authentic. And I think that's a big part of it. So you like to cheer at the ball games. When you're in the role of the executive, you have complete executive presence, and that's why you're not being questioned about or being challenged about being a female because your presence is so solid and so authentic. And so I want my cohort members to watch and to look at that as an example. Executive presence goes a long way in the way that you're perceived, and that's a real life component.
Hmm.
And I love the idea that being your authentic self is far more powerful than trying to be someone that you're not. That's really
Yes.
great. So, as we wrap this up, I wonder if you'd mind sharing this session's problem-based learning scenario, which our cohort will be jumping into immediately as we start our session coming up.
Absolutely. And this is an excellent scenario. As I was reading through it, I thought, oh, I would hate to be that superintendent on that day. But this is so real. This is full of reality, and this absolutely could happen. So yes, let me jump right in. Pine Ridge, year two. You've just begun your second year as superintendent of Pine Ridge Schools, a mid-sized district, 8,500 students, 11 schools, in a politically divided community. Your board hired you to raise achievement, calm the politics, and restore trust. On a Friday night, a local news station runs a 7-minute segment about a middle school fight that was filmed by students and posted on social media. The segment shows graphic video of the fight in the hallway, highlights that one student was hospitalized, includes an interview with a parent claiming the district is unsafe and alleging the school is soft on discipline. Over the weekend, the video goes viral locally. A community Facebook group gains thousands of comments, many demanding zero tolerance and some personally attacking you by name. A board member shares the video on their public page, writing, "This is what happens when we prioritize restorative practice over safety." Anonymous emails and direct messages accuse you of not caring and protecting bad kids. By Sunday night, you've received 37 emails from parents demanding immediate action. A message from the board chair: "We need to talk first thing in the morning. This will be on the board agenda Tuesday." From your deputy superintendent and principal, you learn the fight involved two students with prior conflicts. Staff intervened in under 30 seconds. The hospitalized student was released 1 hour after arriving. The school followed district protocol, immediate separation, parent contact, investigation, and temporary suspension pending a hearing. The school has actually reduced fights by 30% over the last year with a mix of restorative practices and targeted supports. One faction wants you to crack down and promises to introduce a motion for stricter discipline at Tuesday's meeting. Another faction warns against overreacting to a viral video and wants to protect restorative practices. Local talk radio and social media are debating whether you are strong enough and visible enough as a leader. A reporter emails asking why you haven't issued a public statement yet. The principal feels thrown under the bus and is considering whether this job is sustainable. Teachers are anxious that an incident could be filmed and misrepresented. Your cabinet is split on how visible you should be. Some say get out front, others say let the school handle it. Your spouse asks if it's safe for your kids to attend district events now that your name and photo are circulating with angry comments. You've slept poorly, you feel physically tense, and catch yourself checking your phone obsessively. You question whether you can protect both your family's privacy and meet the community's demands for visibility. Then it hits you. This is no time to feel sorry for yourself. Time to take the lead, set the tone, and guide the district through the issue. How you respond can define how people remember your leadership. What is your strategy?
Wow.
Yeah,
Thank you
that's a
so much.
lot.
Oh, is it ever? But boy, I can just see Channel 18 at the door right now.
Yes, yes. And I will comment, Owens, this is just extra, but this is a piece of advice about the news media. And it goes back to that, my story about filling the bucket. Get to know the news media and talk to them when they are requesting something, that information that's not necessarily controversial, like they want to do a story on how many NTI days have you missed, or, talk to them. Because then when you build that relationship and there's a trust relationship built, and then there's something that hits social media, if they have your cell phone number, they'll call you and they'll listen and say, is there anything to this? Or, and if you've built that relationship with them and there's trust there, then that goes a long way when you're combating an issue such as in this scenario.
Fantastic advice as always. Dr. Ballinger, we thank you for your time and your willingness to share. Always a pleasure. And thank you so much. And have a great rest of the school year. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity.